Welcome to Listening to Lawyers, a special project of the Wisconsin Lawyers Assistance Program at the State Bar of Wisconsin. Listening to Lawyers provides the Wisconsin legal community opportunities to hear personal stories from Wisconsin's lawyers about adversity, perseverance, resilience, transformation, and hope. Hello, I'm Amber Alt, your host for this episode of Listening to Lawyers. Today's guest, attorney Aviva Kaiser, was born and raised in a coal mining town in southwest Pennsylvania. She earned her Bachelor of Arts in Chinese from the University of Pittsburgh and her JD from the State University of New York at Buffalo Law School. She clerked for the Honorable Louis Garripo in People v. John Wayne Gacy and clerked for the Honorable Maurice Perlin in the Illinois Appellate Court. Aviva practiced law in Chicago before beginning her full-time teaching career at IIT Chicago Kent College of Law. She came to the UW Law School in 1987, teaching professional responsibility and ethical and professional considerations in writing, problem-solving, and risk management. Attorney Kaiser was the Legal Research and Writing Program Director from 1992 to 2002 at the UW School of Law. She served as a member of the State Bar of Wisconsin Professional Ethics Committee from 2007 to 2013 and on the Encourage Placement of Minority Lawyers Committee from 1997 to 2004. From 2013 to 2023, she served on the professional staff of the State Bar of Wisconsin as Ethics Counsel. It's a delight to speak with you.
Thank you, Amber. I appreciate the introduction.
You've agreed to talk with me about an issue that affects many lawyers and many lawyering families, which is work-life balance, in particular related to the rearing of children while lawyering.
Yes.
Before we get into that, I wonder if I could just ask you a little bit about becoming a lawyer, how a girl goes from being raised in a coal mining town to wanting to become a lawyer, knowing that lawyers exist, and deciding to get on that path?
So I was a telephone operator with Bell Telephone. I worked from 7 at night to 1 in the morning, and I went to college during the day, so at the University of Pittsburgh. And I was an English major, and I loved poetry. So I read this book called The Chinese Ideograph as a Medium for Poetry, and I thought, well, I know French. I can learn Chinese. Well, I started Chinese, and I loved it, so that became my major. When I graduated from college, I wanted to go on and become a teacher in Chinese, and I was told, even though I had no accent, I was doing great, that there were so many native speakers, and I had no teachers or professors who were not native speakers at that time. So I said, okay, that's not going to work. What do I do? And everybody said, you should go to law school. Well, I really didn't know what a lawyer did, but it was 1975, and so I went to law school. As an activist, I was worried about law and its social change, and so I went to State University of New York at Buffalo. Our dean was a social scientist and not a lawyer, so I was in their JD PhD program, and so that's how I got to be a lawyer.
So to put this in a historical context, 1975, you decide to go to law school.
Yep.
1968, 69, 70, the height of the second wave of the women's movement, a wave of activism. So you mentioned being an activist. I wonder, when you went to law school in 1975, how many women did you go with?
Our class was at least a third women, and that's because it was SUNY at Buffalo. And so that was the only state-supported law school, so a lot of New York residents went there, but also because we had a social scientist for a dean, and many of us were really interested in law and its social context and how we could use law to encourage change.
And which of those, there were multiple strands of activism. There had been the anti-war movement, there had been the anti-nuclear movement, there were like the civil rights movement. Which of those were the places that you felt most aligned?
Civil rights and women's rights. I mean, growing up where I did, there was a lot of poverty. And so I was really concerned about, seeing my dad, who was a union member, who was on strike a lot. And even when he retired, $400 a month of a pension. And the other side of my family, coal miners, there was just so much injustice I saw there. And then with the women's movement, I became really concerned about how it was progressing. Like, pregnancy is not a disease. Why was it being treated disease? And what did that mean for the future? It meant that women were looked at as, oh, you're sick when you're pregnant. And that continued once you had a family. And so it made it really difficult for me to see equality there. So that was part of it as well.
Mm-hmm. And the kind of law you envisioned yourself doing when you went to law school was what?
So I wanted to be a legal aid lawyer. So actually, I never finished my PhD because my advisor moved to Chapel Hill, wanted me to go with him, and I just didn't want to do that. So, and it wouldn't have been any helpful because it was looking at what happens to the political agenda when you have more than one company or family owning different types of media. So with the internet today, it would have been useless. But so I wanted to be a legal aid lawyer. And I went to my interview in Chicago, got mugged coming home, and didn't get the job. So I was clerking for the judge on the John Wayne Gacy case. He told me to get dressed up. He was taking me for lunch. Instead, he took me for an interview in the Illinois Appellate Court because they needed a clerk because one of the judges there kept firing his clerks. And so I got that job. And then after that, there was a fairly substantial firm that everybody knew. It was an all-Jewish firm, and I'm Jewish. And they allowed me to do a lot of pro bono work. And so I went there. And I was teaching part-time at night at Chicago Kent, and they asked me to come on board full-time. And that gets into parenting because I was working really long hours at my law firm and doing travel.
By about now, you're about 30?
Yes. Bob and I got married in 1978, and we're still married. And so as we were thinking about starting our family, we realized that meeting at a hotel somewhere because it was time. And so, well, you know, he was working, I was working.
Sure.
It's like, let's meet for lunch. Once we started looking at what it would look like working and having a family, we decided that it was time to plan. And here's one of the things. When Bob and I got married, we have a prenup. It had nothing to do with money. It had to do with our hopes and dreams. He wanted to be a career prosecutor, so we knew that that wasn't going to be a money-making profession. I wanted the opportunity to work, but also to raise my children. And so we knew that that was going to dictate our choices. And so even though the firm paid really great money, it was good and saving while we did that and getting a house, we knew that that wouldn't probably continue. And we couldn't continue. I mean, Bob was in the trial courts because he was an assistant state's attorney, which is the prosecutor in Chicago. And I had an interview with Northwestern Law School to work in a clinic. It was a job that I wanted so badly. And I found out I was pregnant. And I said, you know what? It's not going to work. I'm not going to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. Which was fine because then I taught part-time. But I guess that leads into maybe the decision-making. So before I finish that story, there were like, you know, I want people to have takeaways, right?
Oh, we'll get there.
Okay.
We've got time. We'll
right.
get there.
So there were a couple ideas I wanted people to consider. One is I don't use work-life balance. I use work-life integration. Mm-hmm. And for me, people can Google that or look at this stuff. The reason I use that is because for me, it was work and not work or. And I found that really helpful. For those who had me in school, they will know that I brought my kids to law school. So when I was teaching at Chicago Kent, I had Zach when I was 30. I took him as an infant. I taught with him in my arms. The director of our program, Ralph, became Uncle Ralph Brill, who is deceased now, but he would parade Zach around the law school, sometimes while I taught. When Hannah was born at UW, I taught with her in my arms. She wasn't even 2 weeks old, and I was in the classroom teaching. I nursed her while I was teaching with a blanket over me. I had my office in the basement of the law school, and nobody could hear her. And then I had a student who was in Child and Family Studies who would come in to watch her sometimes. And I never asked, by the way. I did it.
Say more about that, Aviva.
Okay, so it comes with the second part, which is having guiding principles. And for me, it was about, once you'd establish what your guiding principles are for your life, whether it's for your career, your marriage, if you have one, your children, your religion, your community, whatever those are, I spent a lot of time thinking, what are my guiding principles? And then from there, that gave me structure for my goals and what I wanted to accomplish. And for me, that was like, how am I going to show up for all these things? And so we don't have family here. My parents were in Pennsylvania. Bob's parents were either in New York or Scottsdale, depending on the time of year. My brother was in Alabama. His siblings were either in Vermont, Connecticut, Arizona. So we had no one. And the question was, how were we going to have a family and get the support we needed? And that was tough, I have to say. And at the time, it's not like you fit in anywhere. If you were full-time, like I got criticized when Zach was born and I was at Chicago-Kent because I gave up a full-time teaching career after he was born and went part-time. And the women said I spoiled it for them by doing that. And then the women who were my sort of playmates when my kids were little, and who weren't working even part-time, that was a difficult relationship for whatever reason. And I feel badly about that. But they just, could do things when I couldn't. So for me, I think that setting those principles, what did I want? What did I want it to look like? In conjunction with Bob.
Sure.
That was part of it.
So the not asking part
is
that seemed really important for you to bookmark, like, this is your guiding principle. This is what you're trying to accomplish. Yeah. There isn't a rule against it. So
exactly.
So say more about.
That's how you change culture.
Thank you.
In other words, that's how. And so many of my women, actually, it's interesting. In my seminars, they would pass the baby around. And it were the men that really wanted to hold the baby. It was very interesting. But then later I would hear from women saying, hey, how did you do it? Because we want to do that. And it gave them encouragement, right? And when I talk about work-life integration, for me, that was so crucial. Like I would start my morning classes with, okay, how many times did Hannah change her clothes this morning before we got out of the house, right? Or, I backed my car into the dumpster because I was in a hurry and I knew that dumpster was there. It's been there for a week and I didn't pay attention. Something that just showed I'm not perfect. This effortless perfection that we're supposed to have isn't a reality, right? And so I call it effortful imperfection, which is from Dr. Becky. And that's so true. But I wanted my students to see that. Mm-hmm. And I wanted, like if somebody's cell phone would ring in class, rather than yelling at them or saying, turn off your phones, I would say, all right, who did Zach pay, my son Zach, to get your number because I'm not answering my phone because I'm teaching, right? And so there was fun ways of letting them know, you've got these stresses and strains as a parent, and I'm not going to deny them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're going to take a brief break to hear from our sponsors. We'll be back.
Videos and other digital evidence are playing a more important role in today's world. The award-winning engineers and analysts at Paradigm Productions enhance and analyze video and audio evidence and provide expert witness testimony on digital evidence in a wide variety of legal matters. When you need to get to the facts, count on the professionals with a proven track record to bring out the truth in video and audio recordings. Email me, jake@paradigmproductions.com. That's jake@PARADYME productions.com to discuss your case and what we can do to help.
WisLAP views itself as an integral part of the broader team comprising Wisconsin lawyers. This mindset underscores the importance of mutual trust and reliance within the legal community. We'll make pledges to uphold this trust by consistently safeguarding lawyers' practice and clients while remaining steadfast presence in the Wisconsin legal landscape.
Hi, Russell Nicolay here with Nicolay Law, Accident and Injury Lawyers. If you have clients that have been injured, my office would love the opportunity to help them get compensated and get their life back on track. We handle referrals and co-counsel relationships on injury cases all across Wisconsin.
And now back to our interview. So when you think about those orienting values, how did the law figure in?
So, once I started law school, it was really difficult for me, first of all, because I was the first person in my family to go to college. My father has an 8th grade education. My mom had a high school education, both very, very bright, but, that was their lives. My adoptive father worked in the coal mines, and then he went to World War II and came back and worked as a maintenance man in a factory, and but just was a lovely person. And so I knew nothing about the law. And growing up where we did, we had a local newspaper. I didn't have a television growing up, by the way. So, it was, for me, when I got in law school, it was difficult because I'm also conflict adverse, which doesn't bode well for lawyers generally. But I ended up liking the idea of being able to do work for society. And whether it was teaching, whether it was activism, whatever it was, that made me feel like I was being helpful. And so I pursued that. And teaching was great because, for example, one of my classes that I had them read a book about how the projects in Chicago changed. And it was a book where they gave tape recorders to 14-year-olds, and they talked about everything. And we got to talk about gentrification. We got to talk about the cases dealing with Columbia University and Harlem, and how those cases basically sterilized the issues by looking just at law, right? Mm-hmm. And so there was just so much to bring in. And so I love that about teaching. And I think that for me, I just lucked out finding a career that I loved. And then ethics became really important. One of the things we have to realize is there's so many chapters to our lives. And I was talking to my daughter, who's 31 now, last night, and she said to me, Mom, what was interesting is when you took the job as ethics counsel, because they were grown, and I felt like I could do a lot more traveling or anything. And she said, you just blossomed in that job. It was like the first time we saw you in a way as a powerful lawyer, as opposed to, this teacher and all these other things. So I had 10 years of that, and that was great. But I wouldn't trade that for all those other years I had. And our kids are 10 years apart. So Zach's 41 and Hannah's 31. And that's a long time, Yeah. But, yeah.
So talk to me about the parenting part and what titrating your schedule did for helping you have the quality of family life that you wanted, that was priority for you.
So I asked Hannah about that last night, and I asked Zach about it too. And one of the things they remember, which is very interesting, is all the fun we had. And Hannah mentioned rituals, which, whether it was just breakfast in the morning together, whether it was saying prayers at night together, whether it was sitting at the dining room table, them doing their homework, my doing my work, knowing that they can interrupt me, but that I wasn't off watching TV and making them do their homework, right? And I kind of forgot about a lot of that. Or driving to school. I drove them to school. This is awful, even when Zach started driving to school, the sophomore parking lot was on the street to Memorial because there wasn't enough parking in the parking lot. He would drive and park on the street, then I would pick him up and take him to school. Because if it was raining or snowing. And I drove Hannah to school. But those times were so important to us. It's embarrassing because I love Steppenwolf. And so if Magic Carpet Ride or Born to Be Wild came on, it could be 30 below, the windows would go down, and that volume would be cranked up, and they would slink down in their seats so no one could see them. But, they talk about those things. And so there were all these little rituals that they were reminding me about that I had forgotten. So that's that integration. One of the things that Hannah told me, which I was really happy about, she said, you must have been stressed. We knew that you were probably stressed, but we didn't feel it. And part of that was just, I think, having that guiding principle, and whatever you decide you're going to do is that not impose that on them. Yeah, there were times we were in a hurry, and I'm going to be late if you don't hurry. But then knowing what we had to do to get that ready. So here was his plan. He would take a shower the night before, put the clothes on that he was going to wear the next day, and sleep in them.
Yeah, not unusual.
No.
Works.
Yeah. I never thought of that for me, but it's like it worked. He rolled out of bed, we had breakfast together, he brushed his teeth, and off we went. And that idea of every night getting stuff ready for the next day. It didn't work with planning outfits for Hannah, so we'll just let that go. And having those discussions, that was the other thing. Bob was on trial a lot, and he had other things that he was doing. So just knowing, when Zach was 10 when she was born, she only missed 2 of his Little League games the entire time he played till he aged out. And one was when she was in utero. We missed one. And then the other one it was a night game. It got really late and it got canceled and I had to take her home. But she shagged balls. And every time he got his picture taken he would take off his jersey and the photographer would take a picture of her. So we have all those. But it's joy. That's what it's about, is how do you create that joy? And there are always other team parents that were lawyers. So, on the bench that would get into things. But, it was just part of it's finding that joy.
I'm going to ask you a question about the connection between growing up without a lot of resources and this ability to say, we can live on less. This is what I'm going to prioritize. I wonder if this is a way that being a first-generation lawyer, being that first-generation kid from that background, has worked kind of contrary to the stereotype of the person who makes it and then has a big bank account and then buys the big house and then has all the things. You've made this decision we can get by on what we're doing, and this is our priority. Can you talk some
Sure.
about that?
There were a lot of times we lived from paycheck to paycheck for many years because that's what we had to do. Part of it was when you're growing up where I grew up, I don't think we thought of ourselves as poor until looking back now. We had a huge garden we worked in. We had chickens. We had, so we had eggs and meat. I was canning when I was 6 years old. My mother had this huge pressure cooker canner, and she would put me on a chair in front of the stove and said, if that needle goes in the red zone, you're going to blow up. So just keep an eye on it. So, in that way, but it was always we did things, I don't know, it was that family unit. I didn't feel like I wasn't a part of those solutions. I wasn't a part of, we helped my grandmother. I worked in the garden there. It was part of our existence together. So I never thought about having a lot of things that, actually a funny story was, my goal was when I had a job, I was going to be able to drink Perrier. Because, I had Perrier once. I thought, this is the bee's knees, right? I'm going to get this. And so people laugh at me about that. But,
So you talked about the faculty colleagues saying, you've ruined it for us.
Yep.
And then the playgroup moms feeling perhaps inadequate because they weren't working, they're full-time momming.
Right.
But as life has gone on, have you experienced some kind of
Regret?
judgment? No, well, I'm curious about that, but also before the regret, the judgment about like you could have done X, Y, and Z with this training, but you didn't, or because you've been so self-satisfied with like, this is what here's how I'm leveraging it, here's how my life is, like that hasn't come or it hasn't been relevant to you.
So the guiding principles help. I never thought of myself as being that smart or that different from anyone. One of the things I did learn growing up is my mom was divorced, which was very unusual in the 50s. And so she was a single parent. And then she remarried when I was 11. And he's wonderful. That was my adoptive father. And I don't know if I had expectations for myself in that regard. That's my guiding principles. Like, what is it I'm supposed to do, Is it supposed to be compassionate and joyful and having humility, which isn't always easy, and grace and those sorts of things. And I don't think about what I could have done. I think if I hadn't been really committed to raising my kids, and I just want to be clear about this, I'm not saying that's for everybody, please, And I can tell you that economically, kids can't do that today. I don't know if Bob and I could have done what we did now. And I watch my son, who's 41, and his wife and their 5-year-old, they both have to work, and their daughter's lovely. But part of it may have been because my mom wasn't around a lot. I was shuffled off to my grandparents, and they were old, and my grandfather used to pay me a nickel to keep my mouth shut for 5 minutes. I talked a lot, you could probably tell. So I think that was why I don't feel that way. Did I make sacrifices? Yes. But I don't know if sacrifice is the right word, because I got to do other things. And there are other chapters in my life. Like now, yes, I'm 71, and I retired from the state bar at the end of December of 23, but I'm still doing things I want to do. So,
yeah, what you doing these days?
So I'm doing some consulting work. I don't know how long I'll keep doing that, because keeping current's a full-time job. I don't know if I want to do that. My daughter tells me that she's not going to have a family until I retire. So there's a little pressure there.
A little incentive on reverse incentive. It's so funny.
I know, it's great. Yeah. So she wants us to move to Chicago. Zach he and his wife want us to move to Ann Arbor. So I feel very blessed that, they don't want to get as far away from us as possible. I mean, I celebrate everybody else's victories, but I think I have my own, and they don't need to be visible to anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're going to take a brief break. We'll be back.
Hi, Russell Nicolay here with Nicolay Law, Accident and Injury Lawyers. If you have clients that have been injured, my office would love the opportunity to help them get compensated and get their life back on track. We handle referrals and co-counsel relationships on injury cases all across Wisconsin.
WisLAP views itself as an integral part of the broader team comprising Wisconsin lawyers. This mindset underscores the importance of mutual trust and reliance within the legal community. WisLAP pledges to uphold this trust by consistently safeguarding lawyers' practice and clients while remaining steadfast presence in the Wisconsin legal landscape.
The Lawyer's Assistance Program at the State Bar of Wisconsin is staffed by licensed mental health professionals offering consultation and support to Wisconsin's lawyers. We provide confidential consultation, recommendations, referral, and short-term interventions on a wide range of challenges lawyers face in their work and personal lives. You can reach us by phone at 1-800-543-2625 or schedule with us through our online scheduling system at wisbar.org/WisLAP. Now back to listening to lawyers. So I'm hearing you talk about like which way the wind is blowing, right? And how it's different for your children than it was for you. And that's the macro stuff.
Yeah.
That's the economic environment. That's the cultural environment. That's like a whole lot of things going on.
Yeah.
If a young woman came to you now and said, I'm going to go to law school. I think I can have it all. Yeah, I'm going to have a family. I'm going to do all the things. Would you encourage her? Would you say, have you thought about, becoming an AI expert? Like, how do you respond to that?
So I would encourage, but I would say, why? Why do you want to go to law school? What is it? Because I lucked out. I could have been miserable, I actually had wanted to be a veterinarian. So, but I'm glad I didn't because I don't think I could work on animals. But I would say, why? Why do you want? And so if you're going to have a partner, does your partner buy into that plan? Because you can have it all if somebody else is going to be helping you. But I don't think, and this is, I think, and part of the criticism that I got is people saw Bob's career really flourishing. And so was mine lagging? I don't think so. I mean, because the thing is, I got to do what I wanted to do. And that's the key. If I wasn't doing what I wanted to do, I would have regretted it. And I can't think about what other people thought of me. And that's the hardest part. I know some people think I'm ditzy. Some people think I'm, totally off base about that. That's okay. I don't worry about that. What I worry about is, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Or what, I think that my guiding principles are. I asked Hannah about this, actually, because, I see them, at least Zach and Lisa, have a home. She's a rabbi, he's a professor, so they're making it in that sense, but they need both incomes to do that. The price of their childcare when she was, in preschool and in daycare was astronomical. I just don't know how they do it. And so when I asked Hannah about it, she said, well, she suggested to me that we have to change the profession. So that's macros, right? There's no way with all the financial issues that lawyers have that you can go in and say, let's create an environment that is, more conducive to raising a family, doing this, doing that. I would like to see it happen, and maybe it will if we start saying, all right, let's all of us individually make these decisions, and then pretty soon when those baby boomers get out of the way, and then the Gen Xers get out of the way, because they're 50s, right? And then, so maybe by that time, the profession will change. But then we've got to worry about AI and all the non-lawyer programs and the regulatory sandboxes and all these things that are taking jobs away from lawyers. So, yeah, I would want to talk to that person about that. Did you investigate what kind of law you want to do? Is that going to be sustainable? And how do you see yourself as a parent? How do you want to show up for that? How do you want to show up for your job? I'm one of those people, I can't be mediocre about things. So I had to really pick and choose about what I could do because I don't want to let people down. So,
yeah, it seems like you've lifted a lot of people up, Aviva.
Well, thank you. We'll see. We'll have to wait till the eulogy. Right? I can have my funeral now to hear what they're going to say. Gives me time to.
Yeah, I hope that's a long way off.
Okay, thank you.
Aviva Kaiser, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us for Listening to Lawyers, a special project of the Wisconsin Lawyers Assistance Program, also known as WisLAP, at the State Bar of Wisconsin. Please let us know what you think of this program by sharing your comments on our State Bar of Wisconsin WisLAP website. If you are a Wisconsin lawyer and you're going through something and would like confidential professional mental health and wellness consultation or support, please call our confidential phone line at 1-800-543-2625. That's 1-800-543-2625. or schedule a consultation with us through our website, and that is at www.wisbar.org/WisLAP. The opinions and points of view expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent endorsement by the State Bar of Wisconsin. Nothing in this interview should be construed as formal, legal, mental health, or medical advice.
Listening to Lawyers is a production of the Wisconsin Lawyers Assistance Program at the State Bar of Wisconsin. Recorded and mixed at Paradigm Productions.